The well behind my grandmother's house. My grandmother only had one rule. Never look into the well after sunset. The night I broke that rule, something looked back. I was 15 when I spent the summer in my grandmother's village. It wasn't a tiny village. There were plenty of houses, a small store, and even a school. But behind the village stood a massive forest. The trees stretched for miles in every direction. Everyone seemed to respect that forest. Nobody entered it after dark. Behind my grandmother's house was an old stone well. It sat near the edge of the garden. The stones were cracked and covered in moss. Nobody used it anymore. The first evening, my grandmother noticed me staring at it. Her smile disappeared. "Stay away from that well after sunset," she said. I laughed and asked why. She looked toward the forest before answering. "Some things are better left alone." That was all she would say. For the next few days, nothing unusual happened. I explored the village, helped my grandmother in the garden, played football with local kids. But every evening, I found myself looking at the well. Something about it bothered me. One night, I looked out my bedroom window. The moon was bright. That's when I noticed someone standing beside the well. A tall figure, completely still, just staring down into the darkness. I rubbed my eyes. When I looked again, the figure was gone. The next morning, I asked my grandmother if someone had been in the yard. She immediately stopped what she was doing. "What did you see?" I described the figure. She became pale. Then she told me something she had never mentioned before. Many years ago, a boy disappeared near that well. Search teams looked for weeks. They searched the village. They searched the forest. They even searched inside the well. But they never found him. After that, strange things started happening. People reported seeing figures around the well at night. The stories continued for decades. I wanted to believe it was just an old village legend. But the following night, I saw something even stranger. This time there were two figures, standing silently beside the well. Neither moved. Neither spoke. They simply stared into the darkness below. Night after night, the number grew. 3 figures. 5 figures. 10 figures. Every evening they appeared. Every morning they vanished. Nobody else seemed willing to talk about it. Whenever I mentioned the well, villagers changed the subject. One afternoon, I decided to investigate. I walked to the well while the sun was still up. Looking inside, I expected to see water. Instead, I saw only darkness. The well seemed much deeper than it should have been. I dropped a small stone. I never heard it hit the bottom. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I looked outside again. There were dozens of figures now. They completely surrounded the well, standing shoulder to shoulder, motionless, watching, waiting. I knew it was a terrible idea, but curiosity won. I grabbed a flashlight and quietly left the house. The village was silent. The figures were gone. Only the well remained. I approached slowly. The cold air around it felt unnatural, almost frozen. My hands shook as I pointed the flashlight downward. At first I saw nothing, just darkness. Then the beam reached something far below. Shapes. Human shapes. Dozens of them. Standing together. Looking upward. My heart nearly stopped. The figures weren't moving. They weren't speaking. They were simply staring. Then I noticed something worse. One face looked familiar. Very familiar. I adjusted the flashlight. The face looked exactly like mine. Same eyes. Same hair. Same expression. I stepped backward. The figure smiled. At that exact moment, my flashlight went out. Complete darkness. Then I heard movement below. Slow. Careful. Like someone climbing upward. I ran. I don't remember reaching the house. I only remember slamming the door behind me. The next morning, I told my grandmother everything. She listened without speaking. When I finished, she looked toward the well. Then she quietly said, "Now it knows you saw it." I asked what she meant, but she refused to answer. That summer ended 2 days later. I never returned to that village. Years have passed since then. My grandmother is gone now. The house is empty. But sometimes, late at night, I dream about that well. I dream about the figures standing at the bottom, watching, waiting, and every time I see them, there is one more figure than before.